Hey guys, Doyle again. Welcome back to another product unboxing. Today got something really cool for you guys. It's the new Traptrix structure deck that actually just dropped this week. Structure deck Beware the Traptrix. Just got a hold of 3 boxes and today was going to do something a little bit different. Talk about how good this deck is for new players starting out. And also maybe do a little bit of a quick deck build breakdown using just 3 structure decks. We have a lot of hype and buzz around this product right now. Got a few pro players trying out the deck and actually just seeing a lot of success out of it just right out of the box. So if you're a brand new player to the game, honestly, this may be a good place to start. So let's go ahead and jump right into the unboxing. So, get things started here. And I believe this deck has a lot in terms of rarity and new cards for Traptrix. So if you haven't seen or heard of this deck, you're pretty much gonna get everything you need out of this. So let's go ahead and jump right in. There's already a ultra rare off the top. So some of these we're just gonna quickly go through and look at some of the new support. So first of all, we have our first ultra rare copy of Traptrix Pudica. This card is basically your searcher for your field spell and also a bit of a temporary removal tool. It lets you banish an opponent's monster when it's special summoned. They just get it back or another banished monster back the next turn. So very, very interesting, very playable and unique removal. And this is the new field spell. So one thing of note, it is called Traptrix Garden, which is a little interesting because cards that search specifically Traptrix cards wouldn't actually find this. I think there was a couple of questions around the community of why exactly this was made this way. It is intentional from the sounds of it. It's just a little bit strange, but this card's fantastic. This is an additional normal summon. This is a battle protection, and this is a special summon from your hand or graveyard by banishing another monster in the field. So potentially 2 special summons just off of this card. So, or sorry, a normal summon and a special summon, additional normal. So really, really good field spell support. Oh wow, so we've already got 3 ultra rares here, and this card is, I think, probably the best new support out of it. Basically, this is a Destiny draw for the deck. So, Trap Tantalizing Tune, discard 1 level 4 insect or plant monster or a normal trap. So basically your entire Traptrix deck to draw 2 cards. This is fantastic. It stacks your graveyard. It gets you into more removal tools going second. It gets you into more combo pieces going first. And it also has a secondary effect that lets you recycle banished cards. You can banish it from the grave, target one of your banished level 4 insect or plant monsters or normal traps, and place it on the bottom of your deck. So if you go up against a banished strategy, you never truly lose your cards. So that's really cool. Also, one of the new extra deck support cards, Traptrix Pinguicula. I think everybody's just calling this card Pingu, which is really, really easy to remember. Basically, this card is a searcher for any Traptrix monster from your deck by detaching material. So, and also, whenever your opponent's cards leave the field or are destroyed or banished because of a card effect, you get to attach them as material, which is fantastic removal. This is an absolutely awesome card for the archetype. And lastly, your new Link monster. I know everybody who's seen and heard of this deck before knows of the Link 1 Sarah, because that's kind of the heart and soul of the deck. We did get a new Link 3 for this archetype called Traptrix Oedipus, and this is basically your OTK machine. So while it's on the field, all Traptrix monsters you control gain 1,000 attack. While you have a normal trap in your grave, you're pretty much always going to have that. So that one's really easy to pull off. And once per turn, you can target as many cards your opponent controls up to the number of insect plant monsters you control, and that does include itself, to negate their effects till the end of the turn, and then apply the effect to banish a normal trap from your grave, and if you do, destroy one of those targeted face-up cards. So just fantastic OTK machine. You know, you just get you swarm a field with a few of your special summons, and it's very easy to get just lethal on board and to basically blank your opponent's entire field. And it is face-up cards, not just monsters or things like that. So it is a very, very good kind of closer for a deck that historically has trouble closing up games because, I mean, your main Link 1 monster has 800 attack, right? So it's sometimes hard to get things out on the board to do damage. So one thing I will just kind of stop and take a pause here right away. Really liking the rarity distribution on this deck. We get 5 ultra rares, which is fantastic. Really, really happy to see that. I know anybody out there who likes their shiny cards and their rarities. This is definitely a really cool set for that. Now on to, and we actually have a few more. Wow. Okay, so we have Traptrix Arachnocampa. This is also new support, and this is in super rare. This one is basically during the main phase, if you control a Traptrix, quick effect, you can special summon it from your hand, and then you're locked into insect plants for the rest of the turn. So doesn't affect your archetype, but it is basically just a free extender monster, level 4 monster, which is really nice. And they reprinted evenly matched as a super rare in this. Okay, so I'm going to actually set this card aside to the end because there is kind of a separate point I want to make about the competitive viability of this set, and that is absolutely relevant to it. So super quickly, let's go through the last super rare here, I believe. Yep. Which is another new support card. So absolutely tons of new support in this set. This card is called Traptrix Holotea. It's a normal trap that basically summons itself as a plant monster with 400 attack, 2400 defense, and it is no longer treated as a trap when you do that. So this is basically a free extender because the first line of text is you can activate the turn it's set by discarding a normal trap. So this is yet another additional special summon for the deck, and because it's a monster, you can use it for your Links or your Xyz plays because it's not treated as a trap. And you can banish it from the grave to target a Traptrix monster in your grave and special summon it. And notably, because this is a trap, that is effectively a quick effect. So you can do that from the graveyard on your opponent's turn to bring back some of your other disruptions, like your back row removal cards or your new support, your new banish card, or even your searchers if you're looking to dig into specific follow-up plays. So gotta say right away, before we even get into any of the other cards here, 8 rarity cards or coverage cards for this. So 5 ultra rares, 3 super rares, one of which is evenly matched, which again we'll get into later, but that's an incredibly competitive and obviously great card to see in super rare as well in this set. So this right away from a collector standpoint is really fantastic for sure. So, but we'll set aside our evenly matched for now, and we'll quickly move our other stuff out of the way here so we can go through sort of the reprint stuff. So this is, a lot of this is going to be the old Traptrix support. And I should mention, because these are structured decks, you always get the same cards in every deck. So if you're looking for that, you can definitely check out the set lists online. But we'll just super quickly go through these. So Traptrix Atrix. Basically, this one lets you activate your whole cards from the hand, and their activation cannot be negated. Probably don't play much of this one because, again, the main focal point of this deck is you want to get as many of your cards out on the field as possible, and this one doesn't have any built-in special summon mechanics. Traptrix Murmello. This one, when it's normal summon, you can add a whole normal trap from your deck to your hand. When it's special summon, it's a spell trap removal card. This one you absolutely play, probably multiples of. Absolutely fantastic card. Traptrix Nepenthes. This one is when you activate a whole normal or trap card, you can add it to your hand or special summon a Traptrix monster from your deck. So a little bit of kind of a supplemental extension tool, gets you into more resources. Traptrix Dionea, this is another one you definitely do play. When it's normal summoned, you can target a Traptrix monster in your graveyard and special summon it. And when it's special summoned, you can target a whole normal trap in your grave and set to the field, but it gets banished after you use it. So this is special summon, resource recycler, fantastic card. Traptrix Genlesia. This one you contribute to set 2 normal whole trap cards with different names, one from your deck and one from your graveyard, and they get banished when you send them. Vesiculo, this one you probably do play at least 1 copy of because basically how it works is you can send a set trap you control the grave to special summon it. And if you control no cards in your spell trap zone, you can banish it from your grave to target a whole normal trap in your grave and set it to your field. So you can't do both of those on the same turn, but at the end of the day, this is a free special summon, and then this is resource follow-up as well. So definitely, we got the whole spread of Traptrix here. We'll quickly go into some of the other reprints that are more generic stuff. Got the 2 Kaijus, Kumungus, the Sticky String Kaiju, and Godarlo, the Mystery Dust Kaiju. Fantastic cards, great removal tools, great side deck options. Love to see the reprints of those. Retaliating Sea, which this card's actually gotten a little bit of competitive buzz recently, but it's been around some ban lists outside of the TCG. So basically what happens with this card is when your opponent activates a spell card that special summons a monster, you special summon it from your hand, and if it's summoned while it's face up on the field, any card sent to the grave is banished instead. So it's like a macrocosmos that just sits there during your opponent's first turn. It's very funny against certain matchups. Resonance Insect, this is a great reprint in general for insect strategies. This card, basically when it's sent from field to grave, you get a search of a level 5 or higher insect, and when it's banished, you get to send an insect from your deck to your grave. Probably not too relevant in this deck if you're looking to specifically build a, like a budget version of it. You probably wouldn't play this, but this is a fantastic reprint and is great for insect strategies. Lone Fire Blossom, pretty much the same feedback for Residence Insect. Great plant support, so we got great insect support and great plant support, and they're both good reprints, but for this deck, you're probably going to stick with the archetype cards for the most part. Now, I'm going to quickly set those aside because the next card is absolutely a highlight, and this is the part where we're going to bring back in the evenly matched here. So, what you need to know as a new player starting out, if you're interested in picking up the game and you want to quickly put together a deck with just 3 of these structure decks, you need to be aware of these 2 cards in particular, because you need to know that these are pretty much the best reprints we have seen in structure decks in probably the last year. Getting these 2 cards in one structure deck is phenomenal. Evenly Matched is a board breaker or going second card that basically you skip your battle phase, and at the end of it you banish your opponent's entire field except 1 card. And Ash Blossom is what we call a generic hand trap, where basically when you draw it and while you have it in your hand, whenever your opponent would activate an effect that lets them search a card, you can discard it to negate that card's effect. And to be really clear in Yu-Gi-Oh!, that happens in just about every deck in the game. So this card is, both of these cards are universally good and very highly competitive. So if you are interested in giving this a shot as a deck, fresh out of a couple of boxes worth, you absolutely will be playing 3 of both of these cards. Maybe not in your main deck. Ash might be main deck and Evenly might be side deck. Or you could main deck both of them, actually. They're both great cards, so there's no reason not to. But at the end of the day, these are going to be your absolute highlight staple cards from this deck, for sure. So wanted to make sure we covered that point there. Let's quickly go through the rest of the support. So we got Rose Lover, Sage de Fleur. These are both plant support cards, I believe. Yes, they are. Great reprint. Sage de Fleur, that actually originally came out in the Baron set, so that was a pretty fast reprint. And Rose Lover's an older card. So these are just free plant extension and special summon monsters. And speaking of free extension monsters, 2 Mech Knight reprints, so Blue Sky and Purple Nightfall. Little surprised to see these, because they're not plant or insect monsters, and because you can't normally summon them if you put yourself under your lock effects for your archetype. However, the reason they're likely in here is because number 1, they're great searcher cards for each other, and number 2, because you are constantly making link monsters in this deck, you tend to have 2 zones already lined up, which lets you special summon these for free. So just generic extension, big beater boss monsters. Interesting reprint here. So Artifact Moraltac. This is recently the newest ban list. Artifact Scythe was banned. So, but Moraltac is actually basically a destruction tool. So instead of running Scythe, which extra deck locks your opponent, you can potentially run this, and if it's destroyed in spell trap, it goes to grave, monster reborns itself as a monster, and destroys a card on a face-up card your opponent controls. So it is useful removal in some cases. I mean, it punishes opponents that try to clear your traps and your back row cards. So could work, potentially. Got some interesting reprints here as well. So the hands, the series of hands, Thunder Hand, Ice Hand, and Fire Hand. So these cards are all basically just cycling cards that also have additional effects when they're destroyed. So they basically will pop a spell trap, pop a monster, or in the Thunder Hand's case, they are a free... Oh, they destroy a card as well, actually, and it's a free special summon. Cool. So these are more just kind of generic special summon and card removal tools. Probably don't play these cards either, because again, these aren't insects or plants and don't really have direct synergy with the archetypes we play here. And lastly, two more spell reprints, Harpy, Feather Duster, and Raigeki. Absolutely awesome cards. You can lump these right in with Evenly Matched and Ash Blossom. These are, you know, Harpies in your side deck. Raigeki maybe even in your main deck at 3 if you have 3 of this structure deck would be a good option, because it's a great going second tool, and I mean it's a great board clearing tool to remove all of your opponent's monsters. So wow, this is really great stuff and definitely makes for some easy deck building for sure. Okay, so let's get into the traps, and I imagine there'll be quite a few here, so let's lay them all out, because they're all Trap Hole cards. So we've got Terrifying Trap Hole Nightmare, Trap Hole, 2 copies of Bottomless Trap Hole, Void Trap Hole, 2 copies of Traptrix Trap Hole Nightmare, Floodgate Trap Hole, and we do have one more here if we can quickly squeeze it in, and that's Gravedigger's Trap Hole. So this is kind of your selection of removal Trap Hole toolbox cards that you'll have available to you in the deck. That these are all searchable and usable by your archetype cards, and none of your archetype monsters will be destroyed or affected by any of these cards, so you can freely use them however you want. Couple I want to highlight right now, Gravedigger's Trap Hole, Terrifying Trap Hole Nightmare, and Floodgate Trap Hole are absolutely fantastic cards. So in order, this is basically a hand trap or a graveyard negator that also burns for 2,000 damage. Trap Hole Nightmare is basically a combination removal tool if your opponent special summon a monster with 2,000 more attack, and banish a monster from their graveyard as well. So this is kind of a 2-in-1. And Floodgate Trap Hole, which I'd be remiss not to talk about, which is a fantastic disruption tool in the exact current metagame we're playing, because this card pretty much auto wins against Kashtira, because basically those cards only special summon from the hand for free if their field's empty, and if you immediately Book of Moon the first monster they special summon with Floodgate Trap Hole, which flips them face down, then they can't change their battle position, they can no longer special summon other Kashtira monsters from their hand as like extensions, because they have a card on their field, and none of their effects activate on summon. They have to be manually activated following the summon. So you'll always have an opportunity to activate Floodgate Trap Hole. This type of effect versus Kashtira is so good. People are running a card called Book of Eclipse, which is actually ashable, because when the monsters get flipped face down at the end of the turn, they get flipped face up, and whoever had their monsters flipped gets to draw a card for each. So those competitive decks are actually running basically a worse version of this card to try to deal with Kashtira. So the fact that your deck has access to this as a disruption tool for that matchup, absolutely fantastic. Highly recommend playing 3 of it if you're playing it. And lastly, even notably, some cards like Bottomless, like things like this come up in certain matchups as well, like versus Despia, or basically just any deck that runs Fallen of Albaz, because they summon it, they activate the fusion effect, and you basically you Bottomless it and they lose their main monster for their fusion target. So they're sometimes forced into awkward situations for that as well. Oh, and one more important point, Trap Hole Nightmare. When a monster is special summoned this turn, activates its effect on your opponent's field, negate the effect, and if you do, destroy it. Again, great disruption tool and wonderful toolbox of Trap Hole cards that you have access to in this deck to disrupt your opponent and control the flow of the game and win. So lastly, let's quickly get through the last trap reprints here. We got Traptrix, the Phantom Knights of Shade Brigandine, Artifact Sanctum, and Naturia Sacred Tree. So these are all very interesting. Traptrix basically gets you any of your normal traps in your deck, so great consistency card. Shade Brigandine is just an extra monster that's a free special summon as a trap, so you set it, flip it, and then it summons as a monster. One note with this though, you do have to have no traps in your graveyard to use this card, and I feel like this was probably better in older builds of the deck than new ones, so you probably don't even play this anymore. Artifact Sanctum to search that Artifact Moral Talk we talked about earlier, so interesting that they've got that as kind of a removal tool package in here. And Naturia Sacred Tree, which I'm sure some people will be very happy to see the reprint of, because Naturia is actually picking up some interest in local competitive scene. There was actually a Naturia component in a deck that did very well at the most recent YCS in Las Vegas. So definitely interesting reprint there. Probably don't play this in the deck either, because it is special summons for earth insects and earth plant monsters, but it's a little slow and doesn't really add too much to your core strategy. But overall, these are great reprints for sure. And lastly, and it looks like they saved a little bit more of the extra deck and further Traptrix Legacy support reprints at the back. So let's quickly lay this out. So of course, we've got Traptrix Sarah, which again is the heart and soul of the deck and the only reason the original version of the deck even functioned. Traptrix Cularia, Traptrix Alomaris, Rafflesia, and Mantis. And I'll just quickly talk about Mantis because this is a main deck one. When it's normal summon, you can add a Traptrix monster from your deck to your hand. Easy extension, you can search any of your free special summons and you're off to the races. Once per turn, quick effect, you can target a set spell trap you control, return that target to the hand, then set a different one from your hand. That's actually a good way to dodge removal spells too as well, so it can come up. You definitely do probably still play 3 Mantis, so Mantis is a great card here for sure. But let's go into the reprint extra deck support here. So this is pretty much your bread and butter of the deck, honestly. This is going to be where you get your entire engine, primarily with Sarah and even Rafflesia as well. So Sarah, basically how Sarah works, I'll quickly read out the whole effect. First of all, unaffected by any trap effects. So if your opponent tries to infinite impermanence your Sarah, you get to smile at them and say, it doesn't work, and your card resolves without any effect because it is a legal activation, but it's not going to do anything to your card. So let's quickly go through what Sarah does. So you can only use each of the following effects once per turn. If a normal trap is activated, you can special summon a Traptrix monster from your deck with a different name than cards you control. And if your other Traptrix monster's effect is activated, you can set a whole normal trap directly from your deck. So this basically chains off of, or follow-up chains off of any of your primary plays that your trap cards or your monsters are. So this is your entire engine, so you absolutely will play 3 of that. I want to quickly jump over to Rafflesia because this is your toolbox card that gives you access to any of your trap hole cards from your deck. It basically just detaches a material from itself, sends a whole normal trap that meets its activation conditions from your deck to the graveyard, and then its effect becomes that card's effect while activated. So you can stop your opponent's hand trap, stop their special summons, flip their monsters face down. You can do all kinds of things just with this card alone. And the other 2 cards are pretty much your additional supplemental extension cards because Alomaris lets you special summon a monster, or otherwise detach material, target a monster of yours that left the field because of a card effect and special summon it. And Cularia is pretty much a means for you to kind of keep reusing your resources. So after you activate a whole normal trap, you can set it instead of sending it to the graveyard. And during the end phase, you can target a Traptrix monster in your graveyard and special summon in defense position. So these are your follow-up and your extension plays, and these are your engine, your disruption plays. So that is every card in the Traptrix structure deck. So for the next segment, what we're going to do is actually go ahead and see what we can do to quickly put together a copy, or basically a completed deck list of just a deck built out of 3 of the structure decks. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Alrighty, and with that, let's quickly get to the deck profile. And again, this is the budget deck profile, so the only cards we've used here are the cards that we got out of the 3 structure decks. So let's go ahead and jump into the main deck and quickly kind of go through our ratios and kind of what we put together here. So first of all, I go in the 3-2-1 order. So we got 3 copies of Mantis, 3 copies of Murmello, 3 copies of Arachnocampa. These are your best cards, so respectively your Stratos, or your searcher for the deck, your searcher for monsters, I should say, your searcher for whole cards, and your removal, and also your free generic no restriction special summon, other than your insect plant restriction, but no restriction for your archetype. So these are absolutely your 3 best 3-ofs to max out on. Next, for the Traptrix, we have 2 Dionea, 2 Pingu, and 2 Vesiculo. So these are kind of your less powerful, but still good to have cards. You never want to not have access to these, so we play them all at 2. Dionea is your recycling tool. Pudica is, again, another free removal tool and also your search for your field spell. And Vesiculo is an additional extender as well. It's not your best special summon, but it is still a special summon. At the end of the day, you want to get as many resources out on this deck going first as possible. Sometimes you can even win more by getting a few extra link plays on the field if you have access to it. So we want to go with 2 of each of these, and it's also kind of loosely plays around some of the probabilities and ratios around decks like Runic, where you may get some necessary kind of tool or combo pieces from your deck banished off the top by the occasional, 1 or 2 or 3 cards off the top on their first round play. So that's it for kind of your main deck Traptrix monsters. Let's go ahead and jump into the rest of the cards. Obviously, for the rest of your monster lineup, play 3 Ash. Always play 3 Ash. It's fantastic this card got reprinted in this set, so very happy to see that. Make sure you max out on the main deck ratio for that. Then we play the 1 of Trap Trip Garden and the 3 copies of Trap Tantalizing Tune. This is your searcher off of Pingu, I believe, or sorry, Pudica. And this is your D-draw, find your extra cards, draw 2 more, get into your combo pieces, get into your board breakers, get into your trap toolbox. So these are fantastic cards. Probably would never play more than 1 of the field spells since it's freely searchable, but it definitely does come up and is very valuable as kind of a standing effect on the field. Next, we play, just to kind of wrap up the spell selection, we do play 2 Raigeki. You can play 3 of this, but at the end of the day, you're going to go first 50% of the time and you're going to go second 50% of the time. And the situations in which you need exactly 2 of these to board break, or 3 of them to board break, they're going to be few and far between. I know obviously they do come up, and I'm sure they've, even in some testing of the other videos, they probably have. But at the end of the day, if you go first and you draw this card, I mean, from a competitive level, you're wasting space. And unfortunately, the Traptrix monsters, the new support, has lots of ways to get extra trap hole cards or extra monster cards out of your hand through free special summons or free discards. But at the end of the day, this card is just going to sit there as a turn 3 play, and it really isn't going to help you. So for your basic deck, and we'll see when we get into the side deck that we do play turn 2 options. Of course, you want to make sure you have lots of turn 2 options, but for the main deck, we probably don't want to max out on as many of these as possible, because we would like to go first. That is the point. We're never gonna purposely go second on this deck if we have the option, and occasionally your opponent will give you the option, and certainly if they're playing a going second deck, you're probably not gonna want to have a dead card in your hand. So that's kind of the reasoning behind the 2 Raigeki there. And now let's quickly go into the trap toolbox. So we got the 1 Bottomless, the 1 Gravediggers, 2 Terrifying Trap Hole, 3 copies of Floodgate Trap Hole, 3 copies of Traptrix Trap Hole Nightmare, and hopefully we got everything here. So just to kind of explain this, I know I talked about it a little bit earlier, but this is sort of your toolbox assortment for interaction with your opponent. You can flip their monsters face down, banish them when they're summoned, negate their effects in the hand of the graveyard and burn them. stop your opponent's monster from that special summon with 2,000 more attack, destroy it, and then banish a card from grave, which again, this card is a 2-for-1, so this is a very high value card in a lot of specific matchups. And even just when your opponent activates a special summon monster effect, just negate and destroy it. So this is your clear, your removal, your disruption, and most of the time you should theoretically have access to every one of these cards from your deck. So this is absolutely, if there's a part of the deck that you need to learn beyond the combos and the adding, you know, additional special summons into links and Xyz plays, you need to learn what these cards do and constantly keep them in your mind for what you can do in response to your opponent while you have cards like your Rafflesia on the field. So that's your trap toolbox. And lastly, for the main deck, some other just kind of important 3-ofs. We are playing 3 evenly matched, again, for going second cards. This is your best going second card, hands down. This is absolutely better than Raigeki in pretty much every way. And yeah, you want to max out on this card. So I do think that this is valuable enough to play 3 of. And you also play 3 of the Traptrix Holote, which is your free extension monster trap, not really trap because it becomes a monster when it's summoned, that again gets you more extension into your link and your Xyz plays. So that's kind of the breakdown. Main deck is 40 cards, and again it is very, very focused on special summoning and getting access to that engine. So that's your 40 card main deck. Let's quickly go to the extra deck. So this is pretty, you're going to see a lot of repeating ratios here because we only have so many extra deck monsters that we have access to. So we start out with the most important one to play as 3 of, Traptrix Sarah. You absolutely max out on 3 of this since we're starting with the links. 2 copies of Traptrix Adipus and 2 copies of Traptrix Cularia. If you're playing this deck, and this is a general rule you'll see in this extra deck, you pretty much need to play every card at minimum 2 copies in the extra deck, because right now with decks like Castira that can easily rip a copy of any extra deck monster out of your extra deck before you even get to play your turn, there's no point in playing 1 of a monster. It's just going to get taken away from you. Even cards like Cularia, which I did briefly think about playing as 1 of, because it does sort of feel like a win more card, but we are playing enough extension tools that it actually can come up and be very, very valuable. So again, if 1 copy of that's going to get banished face down from our deck by a Castira card, we do still want to have access to that tool. And you absolutely play 2 copies of Adipus, minimum. Sometimes you might even want to play 3 because you do always need to have access to your OTK tool. But again, if 1 of those gets banished, we still have access to the second one. And the same with Sarah. We're not worried about Sarah. You always max out on your Sarah ratios. So that's our links. So we're playing 7 links. And over to the Xyz, we're playing 8. And first of all, we'll get through our 3-ofs, 3 copies of Traptrix Rafflesia and 3 copies of Traptrix Pingu. So Rafflesia is your bread and butter toolbox disruption engine card. This one's fantastic. You want to always end with this if you can for your starting board because it just gives you access to everything you could possibly want. Pingu, you can absolutely get a ton of value out of this card. This searches any monster from your deck to your hand. This is, I've seen some other builds that are only playing this set 2, and I think that's crazy. This card, you absolutely, if you're summoning Pingu, you absolutely want Pingu to resolve. This is a fantastic card. Gets you access to any extension play, any link or Xyz extra special summon fodder that you could possibly want. So these cards are exceptional. I definitely would say you play them both at 3. And then lastly for the Xyz, we play 2 Alamaris. So I originally thought I was going to play this at 3, but then I looked at the card again and I realized this is a detached 2 to special summon 1 from grave. So obviously it's still very good. Obviously we play it, and obviously we play 2 just in case one of these goes away for some reason. But at the same time, Alamaris itself does effectively amount to a extension tool when we've already set up the graveyard. Is it easy for us to do that? Yeah, absolutely. We can do that most of the time, but there are cases and instances where you're going to be under things like D-Shifter, where you're going to be under things like Gravekeeper's Inscription, the new spell card that came out of Photon Hypernova that locks out the graveyard as well. There's going to be lots of things, even Castura, Arise Heart. Those cards are all going to keep you off and out of your graveyard entirely during your turn, and sometimes it just makes more sense to, if you open a handful of special summons, to basically just go directly into your primary engine and not even worry about those cards. So where Allomeris is very much just graveyard Monster Reborn focused, that's kind of why I'm playing this at 2. One thing it also does do is steal your opponent's monsters if they're destroyed and sent to the graveyard or banished by card effects. You basically attach a material, target one of them, and special summon it. That's kind of neat as an effect, but again, you're detaching 2 for the Monster Reborn effect, so you'll most of the time never get to use that. It's kind of weird how almost, I want to say, unbalanced this card's effects are, because they don't, it's funny, the rest of them all kind of line up and work very well with themselves in kind of like a vacuum of a single card, but this one it's almost like it's a conflict with itself in a way. So that's why, that's a lot of words to say. We're only playing 2 Allomeris and probably not focusing on using her too much over the course of the run. Or of your turn, basically. So that's our breakdown of the Links and Xyz and the extra deck, and the extra deck is 15 cards, so we got 40 and 15. And let's quickly go into the side deck here and just talk about kind of what tools we have for our toolbox. So right away, we're starting with 2 kind of board breaker focused tools. We got our 3rd Raigeki and our Harpy's Feather Duster. Definitely, you still want to have spell trap removal. You may run into other back row decks, and yeah, if you know for sure you're going second, whether it's a game 2 or a game 3, you absolutely probably board into your 3rd Raigeki, so you have options when you need it. And speaking of things to board into in games 2 and 3, if you're going second, Godarla and Kumungus, we do max out the ratios on these 2 kaijus, and notably these are both insects, so they're not affected by your locks, which is fantastic. So you have all kinds of resources between 3 evenly matched, 3 Raigeki, 3 Godarla, 3 Kumungus. You can pretty much max out on 12 cards that will help you going second. So you can absolutely pump up your deck to a place where you should be drawing at least 1, probably even 2 of these cards to break your opponent's board going second. So really, really great going second options there. Great reprints in this deck. As well, speaking of some other cool options, so Retaliating Sea. We actually play this one at 2 as well. This is the one that special summons itself and basically becomes a macrocosmos, and any card sent to the graveyard gets banished instead. This one really messes up certain decks that commit to special summons that dump resources into the graveyard. So for example, decks like Branded, when you activate Branded Fusion, you basically summon Retaliating Sea in defense mode, and the materials they send from the deck to the graveyard get banished instead. And then if they're committed to the Albion play, they basically have to discard another card from their hand, and it would also get banished. So they basically -3 their own resources in that case. And since they don't have cards in the graveyard, if they still were committed to Albion, they're fusing from the hand. So all of a sudden you activate this 1 card and you can turn off as many as 4 resources from your opponent's opening hand. And obviously starting with 5 cards, that is absolutely devastating. I mean, think about it. If they normal summon Aluber to search that Branded Fusion, guess what? That's card number 5. So they're losing a ton of resource out of it. They do still have cards in hand at that point, just to make sure I'm being clear here. They didn't banish their cards from their hand for their Branded Fusion, but they've lost a lot. They've lost 3 cards to the grave. They've lost basically everything they wanted to do out of their branded fusion. They're missing out on a ton of resources. So this card can certainly, decks like that, even, you know, rogue decks that might still be running other crazy fuse from deck effects like Shadal fusion or things like that, absolutely this type of card really shuts those decks down pretty harshly. So very good for certain matchups there. And as well, speaking of certain matchup cards, we are capping out our 2 other copies of Gravedigger's Trap Hole. So we have 1 in the main, 2 in the side. This is specifically for hand trap or graveyard focus strategies, and the burn effect is actually really nice. This is even a decent card to draw in your opening hand, especially if you know you're going first, because again, it helps you stop disruptions, help you stop your opponent's plays, and you burn them pretty quick with this. So absolutely high value against certain matchups, your Dragon Links, your hand trap heavy strategies. And for the last 3 cards, so the last 3 cards get a little bit interesting because there's a couple of different directions that you can take it, and I think the recurring theme I've made the point of here is that we're very focused on our special summoning and really building our board when we know we're going first. So what we do with our last 3 is we actually cap out 3 copies of 3 of our cards in the main deck. So if we know we're going first, we add, like in a game 3 scenario, we'll add our 3rd Vesiculo, our 3rd Pudica, and our 3rd Terrifying Trap Hole Nightmare. All of these cards basically, so these 2, again, these are more free extension cards. Search for your field spell, which is extension in itself. Free special summon extension, free removal. These are ways for you to basically ensure that you're guaranteed to get exactly what you need for your end board going first. And Terrifying Trap Hole Nightmare in itself, again, this one is very good against certain matchups. I included the 3rd copy of this in the side deck because this is a 2-for-1 effect. And specifically, I want to talk about the secondary effect where if you have a whole normal trap in your grave, which you almost always will, you can banish 1 monster from your opponent's graveyard after you destroy a monster with 2,000 more attack that was special summoned. So this card is fantastic. This card is a counter to any of those decks, you know, like some of the crazy decks running around with combination Runic, Tearlaments, Naturia, anything that plays out of the grave. Like this is another means for you to get rid of some of those resources. So certain matchups, this is going to be fantastic to max out at. And again, if you know you're going first, you always want to have as many resources available and free special summons available to get what you need out of the extra deck. So with that actually completes the whole deck profile, and that's 15 cards in the side deck. So 40 main, 15 extra, and 15 side deck. Gotta say, really enjoy putting this together. This is a very good product, and I want to make sure that that's kind of the main point that we're clear on for everybody out there who's watching this. If you're interested in trying out the game for the first time, there has never been a better place to start, because this product is fantastic. Got great staples, great resources for you to try out the game and learn how to manage the back and forth, because there isn't a lot of floodgates, there is a lot of interaction in this deck, and you're just gonna get so much value out of this. This is fantastic. If you're okay with committing $50, trust me, this is a resource for you. This is a deck for you, because you'll learn so much about the game, you'll play so much, and you'll have some great cards that you can carry forward and put in any deck out there. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below, and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more awesome content like this. On that note, guys, that's it for me. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Be safe and be well. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.